In the ruins of ancient Athens, among marble columns weathered by 2 millennia of Mediterranean storms, a philosophy was born that would outlast empires, while kingdoms rose and fell, while conquerors came and went. This school of thought endured not because it promised easy answers, but because it offered something far more valuable, a way to live with dignity in an uncertain world. This is the story of Stoicism, and how its ancient wisdom might be exactly what you need in 2026. Wandering the city in poverty, he stumbles into a bookshop and discovers the teachings of Socrates. That moment changes everything. Rather than mourning his lost fortune, Zeno begins to see the shipwreck not as catastrophe, but as liberation, a violent severing of attachments that freed him to pursue wisdom. He establishes his school in the Stoa, the painted porch of Athens, and his followers become known as Stoics, those who gather at the porch. But this isn't just another philosophical club debating abstractions. The year is 301 BCE. A merchant named Zeno of Citium survives a shipwreck off the coast of Athens, losing everything he owns. Zeno and his students are developing a practical system for living, a manual for the human condition that will prove remarkably durable. The early Stoics understood something profound. We suffer not because bad things happen, but because of our relationship to those events. A storm doesn't care about your plans. A critic doesn't control your worth. An obstacle isn't punishment from the universe, it's simply reality, neutral and indifferent. What transforms these neutral events into sources of suffering is the story we tell about them, the judgment we layer on top. This radical idea spreads across the ancient world. By the time Rome reaches its height, Stoicism has become the unofficial philosophy of the empire's most thoughtful minds. Seneca, advisor to Emperor Nero, writes letters on how to face death with courage and live with intention. Epictetus, who begins life as a slave, teaches that true freedom lies not in external circumstances but in mastering your own responses. And Marcus Aurelius, literally the most powerful man in the known world, writes in his private journals that external power means nothing compared to internal sovereignty. These weren't academics theorizing in ivory towers. Seneca was forced to commit suicide by his paranoid emperor. Epictetus lived in chains. Marcus Aurelius spent years on brutal military campaigns, watching plague decimate his empire. They practiced Stoicism not because life was easy, but precisely because it was hard. The philosophy rests on a deceptively simple foundation. Distinguish between what you can control and what you cannot. You cannot control whether people respect you, whether the economy crashes, whether illness strikes. You can control your response, your choices, your character, your effort. Pour your energy into the former, and you become a slave to circumstance. Focus on the latter, and you discover a form of freedom no external force can touch. This dichotomy of control isn't resignation. The Stoics were active, engaged citizens who held positions of responsibility and worked to improve their world. But they did so without attachment to outcomes, understanding that virtue lies in the quality of your actions, not in guaranteed results. You fight for what's right while accepting you can't control whether you win. As Rome fell and Europe entered its medieval period, many Stoic texts were lost. For centuries, the philosophy survived primarily through Christian thinkers who integrated its ideas into their own frameworks. The Renaissance would eventually recover the original texts, but by then, Stoicism had already woven itself into the fabric of Western thought, often invisibly. Its principles so integrated into common wisdom that their source was forgotten. The 20th century saw renewed interest. Prisoners of war used Stoic principles to endure captivity with dignity. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of modern psychology's most effective tools, rests on distinctly Stoic foundations. The idea that our thoughts shape our emotions, and we can learn to examine and change those thoughts. Viktor Frankl, surviving Nazi concentration camps, independently arrived at conclusions the Stoics had articulated 2,000 years earlier. That the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose one's attitude in any circumstance. Now we arrive at 2026. The world feels louder, faster, more overwhelming than ever. Information bombards us constantly. Social media manufactures outrage and comparison. The news cycle never sleeps. Economic anxiety, political polarization, climate concerns everywhere you look. There's something to worry about, most of it beyond your control. And this is precisely why Stoicism matters now more than ever. 23 centuries separate us from Zeno in the Athenian marketplace, yet the ground beneath our feet feels no more stable. The tools have changed, the anxieties remain. We do not fear invading armies, but we fear collapse nonetheless. Economic uncertainty, social fragmentation, information overload, the constant pressure to perform, produce and prove our worth in an accelerating world. The question the Stoics asked remains urgent. How do you maintain inner stability when outer circumstances spiral beyond your control? How do you build a life that does not shatter when tested? The answer has not changed. You build from the inside out. Consider the inner citadel, Marcus Aurelius' metaphor for the mind. External events cannot reach what is properly internal unless you grant them access. Someone criticizes you, but criticism cannot touch your worth unless you believe it defines you. Plans fail, but failure cannot determine your character unless you allow disappointment to become identity. The fortress is not denial. It is clear boundary setting between what belongs to you and what belongs to circumstance. This requires daily practice. The Stoics understood that philosophy performed once has no power. Repeated daily, it rewrites the mind's patterns. Morning meditation, they called it preparing for the day. Evening reflection, reviewing what went well and what requires adjustment. These were not optional luxuries. They were the training that kept the citadel strong. The dichotomy of control operates identically in 2026. You cannot control the economy, but you can control your spending habits and work ethic. You cannot control how others treat you, but you can control whether you internalize their judgment. You cannot control outcomes, but you can control the quality of your effort. This distinction is not philosophical abstraction. It is the difference between chronic anxiety and functional peace. Negative visualization remains equally relevant. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of losing? Then ask, if I lost it, how would I respond? This is not pessimism, it is preparation. The person who has mentally rehearsed job loss responds to unemployment with action, not paralysis. The person who has considered relationship endings does not collapse when one occurs. They grieve, then rebuild, because they have already decided they will survive. The four virtues translate directly. Wisdom in 2026 means information discernment in an age of manipulation. It means pausing before reacting to headlines designed to provoke. It means distinguishing between what you can know and what you can only speculate. Courage means speaking truthfully when silence is safer. It means taking calculated risks when comfort tempts stagnation. Justice requires treating others fairly even when anonymous online. It means choosing integrity over advantage. Temperance means resisting the algorithm's pull toward endless consumption. It means knowing when enough is enough. Memento mori, remember death, carries particular weight now. Not as morbidity, but as clarification. You have limited time. Every hour spent in resentment is an hour you will not reclaim. Every day postponing what matters is a day lost permanently. Death is not the tragedy. Dying without having truly lived, that is the tragedy. The Stoics used mortality not to inspire fear but to inspire urgency, to remind themselves that there is no perfect moment coming. There is only this moment, and how you choose to meet it. The practical application is systematic. Begin each morning by reminding yourself, today I may encounter difficulty. I may be misunderstood, delayed, or disappointed. This is not because the world is against me. This is simply reality. My power lies not in preventing these things, but in how I respond to them. Then identify what you control today. Your attitude, your effort, your words, everything else. Release. Throughout the day, practice the pause. When emotion rises, create space between stimulus and response. 3 breaths. Long enough to ask, is this reaction serving me? Is this aligned with who I want to be? Not suppressing emotion, but choosing whether to obey it. End each evening with reflection. What went well? Where did I lose composure? What will I practice tomorrow? This is not self-judgment, it is self-refinement. The Stoics understood something modern culture resists. Peace is not a destination. It is a practice. You will not wake one morning to find anxiety permanently defeated. You will practice its management daily. You will not achieve perfect virtue. You will practice imperfect alignment with your values, repeatedly, for the rest of your life. This is not failure. This is the work. 2,000 years separate Epictetus in Rome from you reading this now. The specifics have changed. The principles have not. You still face circumstances beyond your control. You still must choose who you will be within them. You still have the same tools the Stoics had: reason, discipline, virtue, and choice. The question is whether you will use them.